When my mother-in-law handed me those receipts, I didn't know whether to thank her or hate her. That night, the rain was falling hard, each drop hitting the roof like a sharp reminder of how much my world was about to change. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, the worn wood cold beneath my hands, my mind spinning faster than the raindrops outside. Margaret, my husband, Samuel's mother, had come over unannounced, soaking wet and clutching a small envelope. She didn't say much. She just sat down across from me and pushed the envelope toward me, her eyes soft but serious. "Take a look," she said quietly. Inside were the receipts, hotel, stays, dinners, gifts, everything Samuel claimed was work-related. But none of it was for work. That was the night I realized the man I trusted was living a double life, and his own mother wasn't trying to protect him. She was trying to protect me. Before that night, my life with Samuel felt ordinary and full of quiet love. We lived in a cozy two-bedroom house in a leafy suburb of Portland, Oregon. I taught at the local elementary school, and Samuel worked as an accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. Our days were simple. Breakfasts with coffee and toast, walks after dinner, quiet evenings watching old movies. Samuel had a calm presence, the kind you lean on without even thinking. I remember the sound of his voice in the morning, a gentle murmur as he made coffee, the way his hand felt warm in mine when we kissed goodbye. We didn't have many surprises. Life was steady, and maybe that's why. When the first hint of doubt crept in, I ignored it. It started with small things. A missed call here, a sudden change in plans there. One afternoon, I waited for Samuel to pick me up from school for parent-teacher conferences. He said he'd be there by 3:30 p.m., but 4:15 came and went. No Samuel. My calls went straight to voicemail. When he finally arrived, apologetic and tired, he said it was a last-minute work emergency. I wanted to believe him. Then there were the dinners he said were with clients that he never mentioned before. The late nights in the office that smelled faintly of perfume, not mine. Each detail was a whisper, but I told myself they were nothing. Stress. Work pressures. Maybe I was just being paranoid, but deep down, a knot was tightening in my stomach. The morning I found the first receipt, I was doing laundry. I reached into Samuel's jacket pocket and felt a folded piece of paper. Curious, I pulled it out. It was a dinner receipt from a restaurant in downtown Portland, the kind of place he said he hated. The date? 2 days ago? Samuel had told me he was working late in the office. I folded the receipt carefully and put it back. I didn't know what to do with it yet. That night, when Margaret came over, I was too stunned to ask questions. She sat down with me as if we were old friends, sharing secrets. "I didn't want to get involved," she said, her voice low and steady. "But I couldn't keep watching him lie to you." I looked at her, searching for anger, blame, anything. Instead, I found sadness. She handed me the envelope with the receipts. I unfolded each one, feeling the weight of betrayal with every paper. Hotel stays booked on weekends, dinner reservations I'd never heard of, expensive gifts delivered to someone else. It was clear. Samuel wasn't the man I thought he was. Margaret's eyes met mine. "I'm sorry, Allison. I should have told you sooner." I didn't know if I should be grateful for her honesty or furious for the years of lies. All I knew was that my life had changed forever. After Margaret left that night, the house felt emptier than ever, as if her presence had pulled the warmth out of the walls. I sat alone at the kitchen table, the envelope of receipts spread before me like evidence I wasn't sure I wanted to face. The silence was broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional drip from the leaky faucet. I traced my finger along one of the receipts, a dinner for two at a restaurant. Samuel never mentioned liking, dated just a few days before. I tried to recall. Did he ever mention plans that night? No. Had he been home? No. I pushed the papers aside and stood, trying to shake off the heavy feeling curling in my stomach. For days afterward, I looked for signs. Every glance, every word, every absence. But it was the little things that gnawed at me. The smell of unfamiliar perfume lingering on his coat. The phone that buzzed endlessly but never rang when I was around. The sudden excuses for late nights and business trips that never added up. One afternoon, I came home early from work, hoping to surprise him. The house was empty, but the scent of a floral shampoo I didn't recognize lingered faintly in the air. I sat on the couch, heart pounding, the weight of silence filling the rooms. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, that I was reading too much into things. But when I found another receipt tucked inside his briefcase, a bouquet of lilies from a florist across town, not the grocery store where he usually bought flowers, I realized the truth was growing undeniable. Samuel was hiding something. That week, I started keeping track, writing down times, places, and odd behaviors in a small notebook I hid in my bedside drawer. It was my silent journal of suspicion, the only place where my thoughts could spill without judgment. I noticed how he guarded his phone, how he jumped at every notification, how his smile seemed more practiced than genuine. Once, when he thought I wasn't looking, I caught him wiping something off his collar, a faint red lipstick stain that didn't belong to me. The ache of that moment felt like a splinter beneath my skin, tiny, persistent, impossible to ignore. But I still wasn't ready to confront him. Maybe because deep down, I was afraid of what I might find. Or maybe because I didn't want to lose the man I thought I loved. One Sunday afternoon, Margaret called. Her voice was cautious, like she was treading on fragile ice. "Allison," she said, "I saw Samuel yesterday." My breath caught. "Where?" "At the mall. With a woman." I wanted to ask who. I wanted to deny it. But I just listened as she described the bouquet of lilies in his hand. The way they laughed. The way he looked at her. Margaret's voice was soft but firm. "I'm sorry you're the one who has to find out like this." Her words echoed in my mind long after the call ended. That night, I lay awake, the ticking clock louder than my heartbeat. I realized that the man I'd trusted for years was slipping away, and I was powerless to stop it. The days that followed were the longest I've ever lived. Each morning I woke with a pit in my stomach, the kind of weight that made even the smallest tasks feel like climbing a mountain. I watched Samuel carefully, trying to catch any slip, a hesitation in his voice, a distracted glance, the subtle shift when his phone vibrated. One evening, I was making dinner, the smell of garlic and rosemary filling the kitchen. Samuel was unusually quiet, scrolling through his phone in the living room. I called out, "Dinner's almost ready." No answer. I walked into the living room, and his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and for a moment, I thought he'd hide it. But instead, he looked at me with something like guilt in his eyes. He swallowed hard. "Who's texting you so much?" He cleared his throat. "It's just work. Nothing important." I nodded, but my heart wasn't convinced. Later that week, I found myself sitting in my car outside a cafe downtown. I had no real reason to be there, except that Samuel's car was parked across the street. I watched as a woman came out, laughing softly, slipping her hand into Samuel's as they walked toward his car. She had blonde hair and wore a light blue dress, the kind of dress I used to imagine wearing on our anniversaries. I didn't cry that day. I just sat there, numb. I wanted to scream at him, to demand answers, but I didn't have the courage yet. Instead, I drove home, the city lights blurring through my tears. At home, Margaret called again. This time, her voice was urgent. "Allison, you need to see this." She sent me a photo of Samuel and the woman, close, smiling, clearly more than friends. I felt my world tilt. Margaret's message was clear. She wasn't protecting Samuel anymore. She was protecting me. But what I did next surprised even me. I didn't confront Samuel immediately. Instead, I started to collect my own proof, quietly and carefully. I checked his emails when he left his laptop open. I listened to voicemails on his phone when he was in the shower. I followed his schedule, noting places he couldn't explain. It wasn't easy. I hated invading his privacy, but I needed to know the truth. Because the longer I pretended everything was okay, the more I was losing myself. One night, Samuel came home smelling like perfume, not mine, and the silence between us was heavier than ever. I looked at him, and finally said the words that had been burning in my chest for weeks. "Who is she?" He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "I don't know what you mean," he said softly. But I knew, and in that moment, I realized the truth wasn't just about infidelity. It was about betrayal, of trust, of promises, of everything we built together. That night, I couldn't sleep. The air in our bedroom felt thick, heavy with unspoken words and broken promises. Samuel was restless, pacing back and forth as I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching my phone, the very device that had become both my window to the truth and my prison. When he finally stopped, his eyes met mine, tired and full of something I couldn't place. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Samuel," I said quietly. "I know." He looked away, shame flickering across his face. "I know about her," I continued. "The dinners, the hotel stays, the gifts. I have the receipts." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand. It's complicated. Try me," I whispered, feeling tears sting my eyes. He sighed, sitting beside me, his hand hovering but not quite touching mine. "There's more to it," he said. "I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing." The confusion in his voice made my heart ache. "What could possibly justify this?" I asked, voice trembling. He hesitated, then spoke of loneliness, of pressures at work, of a woman who listened when he felt unheard at home. "But that doesn't excuse betrayal," I said firmly. "No," he agreed. "It doesn't." The silence between us stretched, filled with regret and pain. "I'm sorry, Allison," he said finally. "I wish I could take it all back." I wanted to believe him, to forgive, but the trust that once held us together was shattered. And that night, As he lay beside me, I realized some wounds take longer to heal if they ever do. The morning after that night, I woke up feeling like a stranger in my own skin. Samuel was already gone, leaving behind the faint scent of his cologne mixed with the silence of an empty house. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying his words over and over. I'm sorry. I wish I could take it all back. But sorry wasn't enough. Not anymore. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to be angry. Truly angry. Not the quiet, disappointed kind of anger I had carried like a secret. Not the confused sorrow I had tried to mask with hopeful excuses. Real, raw anger. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't want to act out of pain or spite. I wanted clarity. I wanted control. I started by confronting my own feelings in the quiet hours of the morning. Writing in my journal, I poured out every thought, every fear. What did I deserve? What did I want? Could I forgive? Could I forget? Answers didn't come easily, but one thing was clear. I needed to know the full truth. No more half-lies. No more secrets. That afternoon, I called Margaret. Her voice was soft but steady. I'm going to need your help, I said. Margaret didn't hesitate. She agreed to meet me at a small cafe downtown, away from prying eyes. When we sat down, she handed me another envelope. This isn't everything, she said, but it's a start. Inside were more receipts, hotel room, keys, gift cards, even photos of Samuel with the woman, clearly taken by someone who was watching. Margaret looked at me with tired eyes. I never wanted to be the one to break this, Allison, she said, but I couldn't stand to see you suffer in silence. Her words made my chest tighten. Together, we made a plan. I would gather evidence, yes, but more importantly, I would prepare myself emotionally and legally. I contacted a trusted lawyer, someone who specialized in family law. I wanted to understand my rights, my options. It was terrifying, the thought of unraveling my marriage in a courtroom. But it was also empowering. For the first time, I felt like I was reclaiming my life. That evening, when Samuel came home, I was ready, not with accusations or tears, but with calm, clear determination. We sat down, and I told him everything I had learned, every receipt, every photo, every lie. He didn't deny it anymore. He just looked tired. I never wanted this to happen, he said quietly. I was lost. I looked at him, feeling a strange mix of sorrow and strength. We're done lying, Samuel, I said firmly. And we're done pretending this is just a rough patch. That night, I slept with a heavy heart, but I also slept with a newfound resolve. I was ready to face whatever came next. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of whispered conversations and sideways glances. Word traveled faster than I expected, from close friends, to family members, to colleagues at work. I was no longer just Allison, Samuel's wife. I was the woman betrayed, the subject of hushed sympathy and awkward pity. At school, a few parents approached me softly, their eyes full of concern but their words careful. How are you holding up? If you ever need to talk. The kindness was genuine, but it also made me realize how much had changed. Samuel's world, too, was crumbling. His colleagues started to treat him differently, colder, distant. Even his mother, Margaret, once his fiercest defender, held him at arm's length. One afternoon, I ran into Margaret at the grocery store. Her face was pale, her eyes tired but resolute. I told him he needed to make a choice, she said softly, between the woman he betrayed you with and the family he still has. Samuel was forced to confront his actions not just privately, but publicly. There were difficult conversations, apologies that rang hollow, friends who picked sides. But in all the chaos, I realized something important. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about tearing him down. It was about justice, accountability, and most of all, it was about healing for me and for everyone involved. At one point, Samuel asked if I could forgive him. It was the hardest question I'd ever faced, because forgiveness is not forgetting. It's not erasing the pain. It's a choice to release the burden on your own terms. I told him I needed time, and I meant it, because sometimes the greatest strength comes not from what we say but from what we decide to let go. The community saw a fractured family trying to rebuild itself in the ruins of betrayal, and while some whispered judgment, others offered quiet support. I learned who my true friends were. I learned how to stand alone and still feel whole. The receipts, the lies, the heartbreak, they no longer defined me. Instead, they became a chapter in my story of resilience. Months passed, and the raw edges of betrayal slowly softened into quiet strength. Samuel and I separated, choosing to live apart while we both figured out what the future held. The house that once felt like a refuge had become a place of memories too painful to face every day. So, I moved to a small apartment nearby, modest, but mine. Every morning, I'd wake up to the soft hum of the city, the scent of fresh coffee drifting in through the window. It was a new beginning. At work, I threw myself into teaching, finding comfort in the laughter and energy of my students. Their innocence reminded me that life goes on, that we carry the past, but don't have to be defined by it. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, I thought about Samuel, about the man I loved, and the man I lost. I didn't hate him. Betrayal had fractured us. Yes, but it hadn't erased the years we shared, and in that, I found a measure of peace. Margaret reached out occasionally, not to interfere, but to check in. Her honesty, though painful, had been a gift. She had chosen to protect me, even when it meant standing against her own son. I realized family isn't always about blood. Sometimes, it's about who chooses to stand by you when everything falls apart. I also learned the power of forgiveness, not for Samuel, but for myself. Forgiving didn't mean forgetting. It meant releasing the weight of anger and bitterness that threatened to consume me. It meant opening a door to healing and hope, and slowly, I began to step through that door. Life wasn't perfect. It never is, but it was mine, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. As I reflect on those days, I understand now that betrayal teaches us something crucial. It shows us the strength we didn't know we had, the courage to face the truth, and the grace to find ourselves again even in the darkest of times. Thank you for listening to my story. I've shared with you the pain, the betrayal, and the long journey toward healing. It wasn't easy to live through, and it wasn't easy to tell. But sometimes, stories like these remind us that we are not alone. If you've ever faced a betrayal, or found yourself questioning someone you loved, know this: you are stronger than you think. You deserve honesty, respect, and peace. And while forgiveness may seem impossible now, it can be a gift you give yourself when the time is right. So I ask you, dear listener, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have faced the truth? Would you have fought to rebuild or walked away to find your own peace? Tell me in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please subscribe and support this channel so more voices like mine can be heard. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.